Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into something really mind-bending. We're going on a journey into a totally unique philosophical framework that completely flips how we look at our world, our history, and our future. We're talking about Daesun Thought's vision of the earthly realm, a system that essentially blends the divine right into the very ground we walk on.
But, before we get into all the mechanics of how the divine operates here, I want you to think about this question. What if true modernization actually requires healing the past? We almost always think of progress as this relentless march forward, right? Leaving history in the dust. Well, today's explainer is going to challenge that exact assumption. We're going to see how this philosophy insists that you literally cannot build a functional future without first untangling the pain of the past.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the divine earthly realm.
So let's talk about Jigyeguan, which is the view of the earthly realm. Normally, when we think of the Earth, we just picture, well, dirt, rocks, and empty space just waiting for us to use it. But here, the Earth is this highly active, tangible entity. It's actually composed of divine beings taking specific forms. It covers absolutely everything under the 9 heavens. So in this view, the earthly realm is alive, it's dynamic, and it acts as this massive, vital arena for restructuring the cosmos itself.
And it does this through what the source material calls personal emphasis, which is basically the descent of the divine in human form. It completely integrates the metaphysical and tangible worlds. Heaven and earth aren't strictly separated out here. The divine actually comes right down into the physical world to get to work.
So where exactly did all this divine integration happen? Well, there's a fantastic quote from the Jungyang that points straight to Korea, which was historically known as Joseon. It says, "There is no place in the world that treats the gods as well as Joseon." Because the culture there had such deep, deep roots in honoring and offering preferential treatment to the divine, that specific geographic spot was chosen as the sacred stage for all this to unfold.
Which brings us to the principle of original copy, or returning to the origin. Because of its spiritual history, Joseon, and specifically the sacred Samshin Mountains, including Bongre, Yeongju, and Bongjang, becomes the absolute center of the earth. It literally became ground zero for fixing the brokenness of the entire world. It's where this grand view of the earthly realm takes on a highly practical, tangible form.
Moving right along to Section 2, contrasting Korean philosophies.
Here's where things get really fascinating when you compare it to other movements. Take Donghak thought, for example. Both look at the world under the heavens, but they approach it so differently. Donghak was rooted in these very abstract concepts, invisible things like vaporization, and a general philosophy of inaction. Daesun thought, on the flip side, pulls the divine right down into concrete, tangible territory. It's all about substance, specific divine names, and, most importantly, tangible action in the real world.
And, relying purely on abstract concepts had some massive real-world consequences. Get this, it's a pretty wild piece of history. The massive Donghak uprising actually failed, in part because they had a complete lack of awareness regarding modern international realities. Specifically, they were entirely unprepared for devastating Western weapons like the Gatling gun. It really grounds this whole philosophy in high-stakes human history, showing the fatal flaw of relying on invisible principles without real strategic preparation.
So Donghak ultimately falls apart. And yes, it was because of inadequate strategic prep and a poor grasp of geopolitics, but the absolute biggest missing piece was the absence of Haewon. Haewon means resolving grievances. Without a practical way to actually heal the deep-seated trauma of the people, even a massive nationwide uprising was just doomed from the start.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, resolving historical grievances.
We really need to unpack Haewon, because it is an absolutely crucial concept here. Haewon is the active resolution of deep-seated grievances, resentments, and historical traumas. Daesun Thought identifies this as the absolute bedrock principle needed to fix fundamental societal problems. You can't just slap a Band-Aid over a painful past. You have to actively untangle the historical resentment that's literally trapped in the earthly realm.
And the beautiful thing about this cosmic rebalancing is who it actually targets. It isn't about rewarding the people who are already powerful or victorious. No, Haewon specifically uplifts the unknown, the weak, and the abandoned. It's pouring energy back into the places and the people that history just casts aside.
There's a quote from the teachings that just hits the nail on the head. Now that we have entered the age of Haewon, people who were obscure will gain momentum, and lands that were abandoned will have their energy restored. Just think about how incredibly optimistic that is.
It's the idea that universal healing isn't just a nice byproduct, it is the actual engine of human progress.
All right, let's look at Section 4, an alternative modernity.
So standard Western modernity, it's pretty much entirely future-oriented, right? It just rushes forward, usually abolishing or completely ignoring the grievances of the past. Well, Daesoon modernity offers a stark alternative. It insists you absolutely must resolve the past first if you want to build a future of sang-sang, which translates to mutual coexistence. It argues that if you build a future on unresolved historical pain, it is fundamentally going to be unstable.
And that brings us to autogenous, or self-sustaining modernity. Real progress doesn't just happen because someone invented a new gadget. It starts when the earthly realm is used as an active arena to untangle historical resentment. We have to treat the earth not just as this resource we extract from, but almost like a shared hospital for history, a place where genuine conflict resolution makes sustainable progress possible.
Let's jump to our final section, Korea's triple modernization.
To really grasp the impact of this, you have to look at where Korea started. The sources point out that when this philosophical construction of heaven and earth was taking root, Korea had the lowest gross national product in the entire world. I mean, they were a colonized nation facing just unimaginable hardship and poverty.
But against literal all odds, they achieved what the sources call a triple modernization. They hit all three marks: political democratization, rapid economic industrialization, and massive cultural advancement. In fact, Korea is the only country with a colonial past to achieve these three pillars all at the same time. And through the lens of Daesoon thought, this incredible real-world rise is seen as a direct reflection of these self-sustaining principles, resolving the past to unlock the energy for the future.
So this whole framework, it's not just a history lesson about one country. It's expanding the horizons of East Asian thought to offer a completely new global paradigm. It's a blueprint. It gives us an alternative to a global society that is so heavily dominated by that standard, forward-only Western modernity that leaves deep societal wounds completely unaddressed.
Let's quickly wrap up what we've covered today. The real value of Daesoon thought for us right now is that it gives us a viable alternative to just discarding our painful pasts. By leaning into the principles of Haewon, we get an actual roadmap for structural conflict resolution. And I love this part. It reimagines the Earth itself, not as empty territory to be conquered, but as a shared, active space meant for divine and human coexistence and mutual healing.
So I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Look at the headlines today. Look at the conflicts happening all over the globe. How could these principles of Haewon, actively resolving those historical grievances, and Sangsang, truly committing to mutual coexistence, be applied to heal our modern global conflicts? If true modernity really does require healing the past, well, maybe it's time we start untangling history instead of just trying to outrun it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this sparked your curiosity to go out and learn even more.